Welcome to this short brief on the EPON Report on the effectiveness of the United Nations African Union Hybrid Operation in Darfur, or UNAMID. My name is Ralph Maimya. I am one of the co-authors of the report, and I'd like to walk you through a few issues today. First, the key dynamics, the key lessons, and then some thoughts looking ahead to the future of Sudan and the lessons of UNAMID for future operations. First, on a few points on methodology, because I do think this was an interesting assessment in the EPON panoply. We visited Sudan in January of this year, a unique time in Sudan's history, a unique opportunity to see a peacekeeping mission that was on its way out, but was also dealing with a huge number of challenges in country and undergoing an interesting transition. We conducted nearly 150 interviews, and I think most importantly, we were able to work with Professor Musa Ismail of the University of Zelindji to conduct over 500 focus group interviews with Darfuris. This was made possible through the support of the Foca Bernadette Academy, for which we are grateful. Now some key dynamics. First, as those of you familiar with UNAMID in Sudan will well know, host state consent and cooperation was a key element in the mission's history. UNAMID deployed in a politically charged atmosphere, and the government obstructed the mission at nearly every turn, denying visas, holding items in customs, and restricting movement. Apart from the operational side, UNAMID also faced a chronic failure in the political process. Not just from UNAMID, but also from the many special envoys and mediators that engaged in Darfur's peace process over the years. It had two major peace deals that never bore fruit. Both peace deals failed to obtain commitment from key parties, and major international actors in Darfur, including the United Nations, the African Union, and the United States, often had diverging interests that led to a multitude of envoys, sometimes working at cross purposes. Protracted negotiations also splintered the conflict, likely resulting in more bloodshed. There was also the hybrid partnership. UNAMID is the first and only African Union United Nations hybrid operation, and we assessed that this arrangement had important strategic value when the goals of the UN and AU were aligned and effective coordination mechanisms were established. Unfortunately, we also found this didn't happen until a few years into the mission's lifespan. Finally, of course, there's protection of civilians. UNAMID is arguably the first peacekeeping mission deployed primarily to protect civilians, and over the years, two narratives developed. The first was that UNAMID was essentially ineffective, a hapless operation that was unable to protect the civilians around it. The other narrative is that UNAMID was unavoidably hobbled by government obstruction. We found that the truth lies somewhere in between these two opposing narratives. The focus group interviews that we held showed that many Darfuris feel that UNAMID did offer some protection. And I just wanted to take you through some of those examples. One question we asked was, if you have concerns about your security, whom do you turn to? We can see from these responses that UNAMID fares well here. UNAMID comes in third after the Sudanese police and traditional authorities, both of whom are, of course, important providers of protection on the ground and far more numerous than UNAMID. Second, we also asked, how safe do Darfuris feel returning to their home areas? Many of them indicated low levels of safety in returning. And finally, we asked, when UNAMID leaves, how do you feel your security will change? And as you can see, more than 2/3 of respondents indicated that they would feel less secure or much less secure. UNAMID also went through an important transition and is still going through that transition. Plans for UNAMID's drawdown were established in 2017 and went into effect in 2018, with the Security Council mandating the mission to leave by this year, 2 years ago. At the end of 2018, however, protests began in Khartoum that resulted in the overthrow of longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir. And yet, despite this momentous political and security event, UNAMID essentially remained on the sidelines. The Security Council provided no new tasks to UNAMID and maintained the mission's scheduled departure despite a fundamental change in circumstances. We assess that council members lost sight of the end state and became focused on an end date for UNAMID. At the same time, the mission's transition plan established important coordination mechanisms for peace building with the UN country team. This mechanism, called the State Liaison Function, established peace-building presences in which UNAMID staff and UNAMID's assessed peacekeeping budget was transferred to UN country teams to scale up their capacity in key areas. This may seem like a small and even common sense approach, but it's the first time this has been done in UN peacekeeping. It's an important initiative that should be built upon in the coming months. Now, on lessons, we drew 3 key lessons from UNAMID's experience. First, politics must not only be primary, but must also be coherent. A unified political vision, not only from the Security Council, but also from key political actors, such as the African Union and important bilateral member states, is required in a complex political context. The sometimes differing agenda of these key actors resulted in lost opportunities, especially early in the Darfur conflict. And second, peacekeeping operations must remain true to the people-centered approach highlighted by the High-Level Independent Panel for Peace Operations 5 years ago. Too often, we see mission leaders accept elite bargains in the interest of short-term political success. These moves can cost the mission legitimacy and credibility in the eyes of the people it is meant to serve. Even where missions have short-term goals, they need to consider their credibility and the UN's long-term credibility. Arguably, UNAMID's failure to do this is why it has been so easily sidelined in current events. The transition and drawdown of the mission are also important processes, but they must adapt to changing concerns. The Council must focus on end states rather than end dates. Now, looking ahead. First, the effects of Sudan's political revolution is still being felt. Violence in Darfur has increased since the fall of al-Bashir. The new political dispensation has made one of the most notorious Darfuri generals, a leader of the former Janjaweed, one of Sudan's most powerful people. And beyond elite politics, we see new local dynamics in Darfur that warn of increased violence. The government of Sudan and the Darfur rebels recently signed a peace agreement in Juba, South Sudan. This is an important milestone, an extremely positive event, but it also risks repeating mistakes of the past through incomplete buy-in from all parties and unfunded mandates. This time there's also a significant risk of a lack of international support to implement the agreement effectively. This is a complex agreement that calls for important support from the United Nations, but thus far it is unclear how this support will materialize. UNAMID will end at the end of this month, but it will be months before it is fully withdrawn, and serious considerations need to be given to how UNITAMs, UN agencies, and the government of Sudan can leverage UNAMID's assets and experience as it departs. The burden of this plan falls squarely on UNITAMs and the UN agencies. A downsizing mission cannot reinvent itself, and it requires a vision from UNITAMs and the UN agencies, especially on issues such as the protection of civilians. This is an immensely important time for Sudan. Candid analysis, coordinated action, and swift decision-making have never been more important. Thank you.